Of a tutorial. Today we want to look at forms, how to insert form element and those elements and the controls in HTML. This will be very interesting, trust me, and you'll like it. So I am gonna let's just choose a new file, create a new file, and call it forms. Okay, .html. Okay, and our forms is here. So I just created a doc type, and let's enter from the HTML5 and meta, all that. Okay, let's just call it viewports, not what. Okay, what this does is it fits the viewport attribute, actually fits your content. It fits, it occupies the entire screen or the entire width of whatever device you're using, and it scales your content such that it will look very nice on whatever device you're using. So that's what I'm saying. The device, the width of this content, the width of this port, the port is now your site. So the width should be the device width. That means you should fill the entire width of the device. And the initial scale here means that it should not be diminished, and it should not be maximized. Sorry, not maximized. It should not be expanded, like magnified. Yes, it shouldn't be magnified. It should just be at initial scale. It should just be at the original width, not magnified, not diminished. Okay, so that's that. And I'm gonna use h1 attribute here. H1 attribute, and I call it forms. Okay. Let's continue. Now, to create forms element, you need the form tag, and the form tag has properties, as attributes, and one of them is the action attribute. The action attribute specifies where you want to submit this form to. Now, a form is just like the normal forms in real life, where you'll be given a form, and then there are fields which you need to fill in, like your name, your email, your sex, your gender, and all that. So you can also define that. Now, when you fill a form, you submit it to somewhere. You submit maybe to a person or to an office or something. So the same thing, the action attribute actually specifies where you want the form to be processed, which script should process the input of the form. So it can be processed within the same document, or you can send it to a dedicated script, a dedicated HTML file. Sorry, not HTML. HTML does not process from input, so it can be sent to a dedicated PHP or server-side script, like document, maybe PHP, ASP.NET, and all that, to process the form inputs, and then maybe store it in a database or something. So that's what the action does. Now, the get attribute has two values. The first is the get, and the other is the post. Now, what happens in get? If you're using get will append the values of the form, like each element in the form. The value which you input will be appended to the URL. So if you look at the URL of your browser, if the form was submitted using get, you should be able to see all the values which you entered in the URL bar, of course. Okay, so that's that. So it's not very good if you have sensitive data which you want to submit, like passwords. You want to submit a password maybe from a login page. It's not very good to use get. Please don't even try it. Okay, so while the post value, the other one is the post. The post doesn't append the values to the URL. It encrypts it and sends it somehow, so it's hidden from the user. But the get, it can be seen. Whatever you're sending can be seen by the user. So I'll do something here. I'll first of all use get, and then to show what I am actually saying, and then I'll use post. Now, the char set is not very important, but it just specifies the character set which is accepted by this form. There is another one which is called the enctype. Okay, and then the enctype is used especially when you're submitting binary data, like maybe file uploads. If you're uploading a file, So if there is a field for uploading a file, you should include this. And what you should actually use if you're submitting file uploads, you should use multi-part form data. Okay, so that will help you to upload files. If you don't include the end type, then whatever you're uploading will not reach the server. It will not get to the form to the server-side scripting form that is to process the form. Okay, having said that, let's just go. Now we have different types of form element. We have the, let me just write them here before we continue. Just write them here. We have email, we have text, we have, oh god, sorry for that, it's already okay. We have email, we have text, we have password. Let's continue. We have submit, we have button, oh god, we have button, we have radio, we have selects, which is equivalent of a combo box. Okay, I mean, yeah, combo, that is a drop down. We have select, we have file, which like I said you use to upload files. You have dates, you have number. Some of these are self-explanatory. Number is used to get just numbers, so it won't accept alphabet. Date is used to get the current date time, the dates. We also have date time thing. Yeah, it should date time. Yeah, we have the date time. Okay, we have which other one? We have a lot of them. Well, we have the checkbox too. I wrote the radio. We have the checkbox. Radio is used to get singular input, while checkboxes are used for multiple options. So if you want the user to select multiple options, you should consider using a checkbox. But if you want the user to select just one option out of the list of options, then you should use a radio button. Okay, we have others which we'll look at as we progress. So let's just look at some of this. We also have the label, which is very important. Let me include that at least before we go. The label. Okay. Content, text, file, and all that. Okay, so I'll define some of these. So let's use a label. Sorry. Let me go manual before I go automatic. Okay, so this is how to define it. You have input. So this shows it is an input. It is input for the form. And then you go type. Okay, and then you specify what you actually want. So I say specify text. And then you should have name. Now the type, the input shows it is a form element. The type, you select from one of these. There are others which I've not mentioned too. So you select from one of these, the label and all that. I'm using the text. This one accepts both alphabets, numbers. It accepts special characters and all that. Okay, we also have the text area, label and all that text area. Anyway, as we progress, I will continue bringing them out. Okay, so we have the name. The name is very important because this is what the server-side scripting, the script that is to process the form, this is what it will actually use. To make use of the name, not even the ID. Okay, so you have to specify name. So let's say this should hold the surname of the user for me, and then you can specify the ID. The ID is mostly very useful, especially when you want to style it, or you want identify it maybe from JavaScript so as to do some processing, something like that. So for me, what I do is I get the same. Okay. So you just specify any random ID, or maybe you use the name as the ID too. Okay, and then what is the next thing? The next thing should be the value. But since you want the user to supply this value, so it will not be nice for you to supply the value. You can skip the value attribute unless you have a value already which you want to display. But if you do not have a value you want to display, you can skip this altogether or you leave it blank. Okay. Now the next thing should be one. A lot of persons like using the placeholder. The placeholder text is the text that is displayed when there is no value, when the value is blank. So you could use that to just place text to tell the user what type of input you want there. So I could use a placeholder and say enter your surname. Enter your surname. So with this, the user should know that this input box is for the surname. This is particularly useful when you're not using a label. But if you're using a label, okay, then that should not be very important. But you could still add them anyway. Now this is how to specify your label. Just the label tag. But the label tag also has an attribute called the for. The for actually shows, okay, it's linking this label to a particular input element. So I can say let this label be for the name. So the surname. Now this label is now dedicated to the surname, this particular input element. So in other words, if someone clicks on this label, it should focus. The focus should shift to the surname because it's dedicated to that. So now I will now specify the label, what I actually want to appear. I actually want the surname to be displayed there. Okay, let's just view this first. I'll view this. For this, I will not want to run this on my browser. Let me run this. Okay, let me run this from my browser, not in app, because there's something I want to see. I'm using Get, so I wanted to see something. Okay, so now notice I left this blank. The action attribute is blank. If it is blank, then the form will be submitted to the script. That means it will be submitted to itself. So if the action attribute is blank, the form will submit its contents or whatever it is to itself, to the script that called it. So if you do not want that to be the case, then you have to specify another script where you want the form input to be submitted. Okay, so let me run this. So I'm running forms.html. And like I said, I'm not running in app, so it's giving me suggestions. I will use one of my browsers. Let's use Chrome. Okay, let's use Chrome. Okay, now it says, so it created a local host and it's saving it from the local host. This is very important and it's very good, especially when you're doing JavaScript debugging and all that. Okay, so this is that. Sorry, these are the text which I wrote below. They're not supposed to appear. See, this is a placeholder. Enter your text. Once I start typing, it should disappear, right? So it's not actually value for this form, right? It's just there to tell you what sort of input is required. Okay, so I can say let the surname be maybe Maris. Okay, Maris. Oh, there is no submit, so I cannot submit this form. Okay, let's go back and something I want to do. Something I just want to show before we continue. Let's delete this out because I actually made that design dirty. Oh god. So I don't need this ones. Okay. Now let me place a button called submit. I'll define an input element with type submit. The submit, the input element with type submit is used to submit the form. So you just submit the form. When you hear someone say submit, it means give it back, return it, send the input, process it, start, just send it. So that's what it means. And I'll call the name. I'll say the name is maybe submit. You can give it any name you want, and the ID should be submit. And since this is a button, we need to specify the value because that's what will be displayed on the button. If you omit the value, then nothing will be displayed on the button. So I'll just call this and I'll call it submit. Okay, now we had seen that because there was no value, the placeholder text was displayed, right? Now let me specify a value for this text, and let's say the value should be Oscar. Now you discover when I run this, the placeholder text will not be displayed, but the value will be displayed. So that's to tell you that the placeholder only holds, it only occupies the this thing until an input or a value specified for it. Okay, so let's run this again and see how it goes. Yeah, let's continue with Chrome. Okay. Okay, you see, is how it is. So that's the summit, and you see it is the value which I specified that is now displayed. If I delete this value, the placeholder text comes back, right? So let's give it a value. Okay, using that. Now I click on submit. Something I want to show you in the URL. Oh, sorry, I would have shown you this before coming to this, but it's not bad. It's still something. Okay, so this is the URL, right? Now if I edit this, you see what happens? Forms.html, surname, Afiakinye, right? So it is sending the inputs. Remember, the value, the name of this text box here was surname, and the name of this button here is submit. So you see what is happening here. So the surname, the name, and the value, the name, and the value, submit, right? Okay, so that's that. Let's refresh this. I'm going to send this again. Something I want to look at again before we continue. So let's define other ones. So I'll define another label, and the label should be for, let's say, email. Okay, and now I'm defining an input element of type email. So this is input of type email, and the name should be email. I don't want to specify the value, so let me just take that out altogether. Okay, you'll notice the name is email, the name of this one is surname, and the name of this one is submit. So once we submit, we should see everything like that, and with the values. So let's just stay tuned and see what's happening. Okay, now this is how it looks like. Now before I send this thing, I input the value and I submit the form. Nothing is appended. Nothing, right? You see? Nothing is appended. But now I am going to input the value and submit the form, and you'll see. Let's allow that to be Oscar, and let's call this. Oh, let's change this to a name like Michael. So the surname is Michael, the email is this. I click on submit. So it submits to this. It's still submitting. Now let's view the URL again. You see, the surname is Michael, the email is the complete email, but its URL encoded, and then the submits. Okay, so that is what get does. That is what get does. Now, like I said, get appends the input there. But if I change the method from get to post, you see, even when the form is submitted, after the form is submitted, nothing will be appended, nothing at all. So let me save this and run again. So the method is now post. Okay, let's just view that and see. We're almost there. It's coming up. Okay, now, so we look at it. Nothing there, right? There's nothing there. So let's submit Oscar and maybe Morris Oscar this. Yeah, so we use Oscar. I submit. It's submitting and it's done submitting and nothing has been added. So that is the advantage of posts. It helps you to hide your data and whatever you're sending. It's very good, especially when what you're sending includes password. Password should be very sensitive data that should be heavily guarded. So you use posts, and in fact, most of the time, what you should be using is posts. Okay, so that is that. Thank you very much. We'll stop here for now. We'll look at forms again in the next tutorial, and then we'll look at other types like the checkbox, the radio box, the select, and the others. So today we've looked at the text and the email. Okay, now one important thing about the email is if you enter an invalid email and you try to submit, it will tell you please include. So it recognizes and knows that this is not a valid email address, right? So it also helps the type which you specify helps to do some checking for you. Like if I specify the type here as number, it will make sure that the only thing it's accepting are just numbers. It will not accept any alphabets. So it helps you to, it eases the checking. Now, normally you should sanitize an input which you're getting from the user, but you can allow the website or the browser to do some of the checking for you so that to help your life. So that's what it does. The email helps to check. So if you do not specify a good email, no matter how hard you try, it won't submit. So this one says it's not valid, it's not complete. There should be something after the R. It's only when you specify valid email, and although it doesn't check for validity, but at least it checks for the basic structure of an email. An email should contain an R and maybe a dot. So something R something dots. Yeah, it should. So it checks for that, and then the validation is what you do at the server side. Maybe that. Okay, so thank you very much for watching. So we'll look at more other form elements later on. God bless you. Don't forget to subscribe. And then share the video and like if it's worth the like, of course. And then we'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.